Jesse, cue it up. Everybody in their places. It's time to go.
Are we rolling? Yeah, we're rolling. Okay, let's get it done, everybody. Let's go.
Hey, Reagan, how's my hair? Is it okay?
Poxy, they can't see you.
All right, come on, let's go. It's toots, people. Poxy, start on page 4. Get the
Here we
lines
are.
right this time.
All right, I got it this time, I swear.
4, 3.
Come on. It's time for the Ghost of Hollywood.
Well, hello, wall crawlers, and welcome to the 35th episode of The Ghost of Hollywood. I'm Poxy Leonard here with Miss Reagan, and we are ready to party as we moved into the deep end of Season 4.
That's right, and tonight we have our friend and director of photography, Aaron Morton, in-house to discuss his career behind the camera and his latest work on Abigail, The First Omen, and the Rings of Power series.
Rings of Power, yeah, and Abigail was wild too, Ray. I mean, there was so much blood.
Ooh, so much blood.
I wonder how you working all that blood, you know?
You should ask.
I probably will, but can you imagine having to clean all that up? That
I'm
sucks.
sure it's quite a bit. Wait, why are you so hung up on this?
Did you see the movie?
I watched it with you.
Well, then you know there's a lot of fucking blood.
Moving on.
Spontaneous was really bloody too.
Oh, here we go again.
Yeah, people were exploding all over the place in that movie. And it was still a very sweet movie.
Well, of course it's a sweet movie. It's a teen rom-com.
Yeah, where people randomly combust. I mean, blood everywhere. That sort of spooked me too. Like, what if we just started randomly combusting right now?
Yeah, I'd be completely fine with you randomly combusting.
Says the one who's always on the brink of exploding.
Yeah, watch it, bitch boy.
Oh, cut deep, Ray. Cut deep.
And be scared.
I've been scared of you for years.
Anyway, what'd you think of Black Mirror Bandersnatch?
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. That was wild. Especially when Netflix turns it around on you at the end. And then when you had to decide which record to listen to, that part, you know, like, you had to make lots of choices. But that was my favorite choice because you got to decide. I forget the other album, but then there was The Phaedra by Tangerine Dream. So, you know, I was all in after that.
Figured you were sold on Tangerine Dream.
Yeah, but I did read about how many different versions of the movie were developed to play out each storyline variation. And, well, let me stop and explain this really quick. So, for those of you who don't know, Black Mirror Bandersnatch is a Netflix movie that you interact with by making decisions with your remote that impact the outcome of the storyline.
So think of a choose your own path adventure book, but with the movie. And while some of the decisions you have to make throughout the movie are arbitrary, others are significant enough to impact the entire outcome. So if you make the time, you can play out the various paths the movie has available.
Yeah, and I wasn't no good at it, so mine restarted 4 times. But anyway,
As expected of you.
yeah, but I won't lie. I only went through it once, right? All the way through when I got all the way through. It was pretty cool. You know, I'm curious to discuss it with Aaron, though, because it feels like it would be, incredibly tedious to have to film.
Definitely a lot of work put into it, given the total output of material for each path.
Yeah. Anyway, we have more than enough to discuss with Aaron here in a bit after the break. He's done all kinds of shit, man, so hopefully we get to cover a large chunk of it tonight.
And I'm Miss Reagan Earth Poxy Leonard. When we return, DOP Aaron Morton will join us to discuss all things cinematography and his latest work on box office releases, Abigail and The First Omen.
Stay tuned, wall crawlers, because you are listening to The Ghost of Hollywood.
Interested in television or movies?
Then check out The Ghost of Hollywood for the best in cinema-related podcast at theghostofhollywood.com or wherever you get your podcast.
Welcome back to The Ghost of Hollywood. I'm Poxy Leonard here with Miss Reagan, and joining us tonight is Director of Photography, Aaron Morton. A native New Zealander, Aaron has worked on film projects all over the world for the last 30 years, ranging from shorts to commercials and, of course, episodic content and feature film. Recently, he has worked as Director of Photography for movies such as Abigail and The First Omen. He also completed work on the Hulu movie No One Will Save You, which is significant for its visual narration given how little dialogue occurs in the film. And I'm sure we will now venture to learn more about all of this. Says, I'd like to introduce Aaron Morton. Aaron, welcome to The Ghost of Hollywood. How are you this evening?
I'm very good. Thanks for having me.
Now, you've been quite busy this year with, behind the camera, especially in the horror department. Now, let's talk about your most recent work as director of photography for the horror film Abigail. You filmed this using the Sony Venice, correct?
Actually, we didn't. I'm not sure. Someone misinformed you. No, we shot it on Alexa 35.
Oh, all right. Well, I know the Alexa 35 better anyway, so I can talk that one with you.
I did shoot No One Will Save You on the Sony Venice.
So that's probably the mistake in our research. Then I have a feeling is
Perhaps.
Now with so you shot on the Alexa 35. That's a pretty new cinema camera. How is it working with the new model Alexa? What kind of prime lenses did you use?
I love the Alexa 35. It was actually my first chance to use it, and had been looking for an opportunity before that. But I love that camera. We used Cooke S4s as our main main lens package, and that was mostly due to Matt and Tyler, the directors. They love those lenses. They're spherical, not anamorphic. The guys prefer I guess, more of a cleaner look with the lens not getting in the way, if you like. And so the Alexa 35 was perfect because it's a Super 35mm size sensor. The package worked great.
And it's got a lot of versatility. Is the latitude as insane as it is with, like, say, the Mini LF or the 65?
Yeah. Well, look, somehow Arri have done it again. They've made the perfect camera even better. The low light sensitivity, the latitude. There's so many great things about it. Yeah.
All right. Now, as far as when you film in Abigail, you're in a lot of tight spaces and stuff. Yeah, you're working in.
Yeah, it was mostly location, to be honest. That whole the sort of manor house country estate was an actual location. So which obviously brings its own challenges for me. But Susie Cullen, our designer, used it so well and dressed it so well. We used almost every room in the place. It was a fun place to shoot.
Now, when working through pre-production, what were some of the creative decisions you and the directing team focused on to achieve the aesthetic appeal they had envisioned for the film?
Well, we went over the spherical lenses, but what else? What else came to play? Yeah.
Yeah, look, it was that early prep is as much about getting to know each other as well. You know what I mean? I hadn't shot with Matt and Tyler before, so you want to quickly get to be on the same page as each other stylistically and aesthetically and all those sorts of things. So there's probably not one decision. It's more about sort of being willing to have all of those conversations about what you like and what you prefer. And I saw it this way, and so it's really, as I say, being willing to sort of do the work and talk things through, and not being afraid to plan as well. So that was cool getting to know the boys in that way.
Did they take a storyboard approach to the film, or did you have a shot list? What was the communication or the language between you when it came down to actually achieving what you wanted in camera?
Yeah, we shot listed almost every scene, and if where we didn't shot list, we'd certainly had a blocking plan about how we wanted to approach it. We did storyboard certain sequences, and they were often the sequences that had the most action or stunts or prosthetic / makeup sort of crossover. So where a scene involves many departments. I mean, they all do really, but more specifically, the planning around the way multiple departments work together, we would storyboard those so that everyone had a clear idea about how their piece of the puzzle worked to create the whole.
Was there a lot of variation in the script, or was the script pretty tight, kind of front to back? And how did that affect the crew, as far as the camera crew, as far as working through production?
Yeah, look, the script was pretty tight. We pretty much shot what was on the page, and thanks to Guy for that. It was a great tight piece of work. And I guess the differences were where the cast would elevate a certain section, or we'd lean into something that was in the script even more because of how, even I guess the biggest part of that might be Alicia's dancing, because she was such a great ballet dancer. That part of it grew in importance and provided a really cool opportunity to put a bit of a twist on that vampire character. The script always had the opening scene with her dancing, but we really made something more of it than was on the page.
Well, and then of course what was the other? Because I think it was spontaneous, or there's some dancing too, or there's something I forget. But I know that in the scene too, you have where she's dancing, and then at that one point where she's possessing what's her name she's also in Lisa Frankenstein. Remind me.
Catherine Newton,
Catherine
yeah.
Newton,
Catherine Newton. Yeah, when Catherine Newton's dancing in mirror to that, how did you work to choreograph that so that those two shots were able to line up in post? 'Cause
Yeah, that came again, given Catherine's dancing ability, that sequence grew. So it wasn't quite what like it was on the page, but discovering how into it and how good Catherine was and what a great dancer she was, it just meant that the guys could, or we could all sort of make even more of that opportunity. And it just came down to letting Catherine and our Belinda, our choreographer, work together and show us what they could do, really. And then it was sort of transposing that dance across to what Alicia was doing upstairs, and we didn't exactly match the way we shot each side of it, but we did try to get close, which of course then gives Mike, our editor, much more free reign to match those shots from one to the other, just because we didn't want there to be any confusion around the idea that it was Alicia or that it was Abigail that was controlling. She was the puppet master, if you like. We needed to sort of plant that idea at that part of the movie.
exactly. Okay, I understand exactly. Now, what shots or scenes prove challenging to achieve in camera? Because there's lots of blood, lots of things going on in this. So, what did you actually have to achieve in camera, and how were you able to, overcome any challenges that came with that?
Yeah, look, there's not a lot of CG in the whole movie. And where there is, it's probably fixes or extensions or losing cables from stunt rigs and things like that. We didn't, I don't believe, did any real CG embellishment on the fangs or eyes or anything like that. The guys wanted to keep it feeling in camera, if you like, and not draw. I guess the other part of that was that the fangs were so great, and the Matt and Tyler were so pleased with that they didn't want to sort of get in the way of it, if you know what I mean, or distract from just the natural look. I'm trying to think of other.
Was it like a mess to clean up, like a day after day with all
Oh
the
yeah.
blood and stuff? I mean, this shit had to take forever to
Oh,
clean all that.
it's awful. Yeah, but hilarious and fun. Yeah, so the planning, I mean, you're right. The biggest CG stuff is really the bodies exploding, and just having a methodology that we would test around that. And as you alluded to, spontaneous, well, you maybe go about to have previous experience with bodies exploding, and so do Matt and Tyler. Their film Ready or Not also had bodies exploding. So yeah, between us, we had quite a bit of experience. And really, that's a pretty simple approach. It's locked off cameras, it's matched action, and then testing in advance the volume of blood you're going for, so you have some understanding of how big and how big a spread you're going to get, and then it's then the continuity of once a body explodes. If the scene then continues in that room, maintaining the blood look on the walls and the floor, and it's a pain in the ass, to be honest.
Oh, it would have to, especially like in the classroom scene in Spontaneous when like multiple people go in probably like a 30-second span of time.
Yeah, and you get into things because there's so many people on a film crew that have to get in and out and onto the set and do their work, and and so when there's liquid, slippery liquid on the ground, it makes that very hard. So you do things like in advance create blood patches that are pre-poured blood, and they're dried, and they're like basically rubber floor mats in the shape of blood splatter. So you can then just lay these pieces of rubber blood down on the ground, and it looks like it's a pool of blood, but it's not real. So it's all those little tricks that you sort of have up your sleeves so that the film crew can keep working and still make your day.
Having also recently DOP'd for the film The First Omen and No One Will Save You, and more on that in a moment, what about these films contributed to your experience when working to develop Abigail?
They're quite different, even though I guess they're all in the horror genre, but they're all quite different from each other. already touched on the. Oh no, that was spontaneous. Sorry. Look, it's really in terms of how those films helped or informed what I did on Abigail. It's more just hours on the clock or miles on the clock. It's about the more you do something, the more decisions you make, the more comfortable you get with it, and you always learn something from each situation. That's kind of a throwaway answer, but that's sort of the best one I can come up with. Really, it's sort of just making films gets you better at making films.
I understand. I mean, I guess it's so we're almost taking out like being that you were like you said it was is no one can save you is no one can or no one will save you. Deals a lot with like visual where there's no dialogue. So like you were saying, there's a lot of differences in the two. So maybe it's more the question of dealing with the genre. What do you feel like dealing like? How is your experience in dealing with the horror genre evolved, so to speak? And we're not like really horror based or anything like that, so we won't hone you to death on the question. But it's really just it does seem like, say with Evil Dead too, you have kind of an understanding of applying the camera to fear-based or kind of shock-based situations, so to speak.
Yeah, look, I guess, yeah, maybe that's it. It's sort of, it's a funny one though. I didn't sort of seek out horror, which sounds strange given how many I've made, but it's more each script you're looking at, you're just making the best version of that script. Now, is there a lot of blood in that script? Great. If there isn't, if it's more suspense, or you're really trying to look at each script as its own piece of work and elevating it as much as you can, and making it the best that it can be. And now rather than going, oh, I'm making a horror film, I'm just making a film, and that so you. I try not to bring unnecessary baggage from other things I've done before. It's really about trying to approach each job with fresh eyes. Now, in saying that, there have been a few horror films in a row, and you do get to lean into that idea that you're manipulating people even more than you might normally on a regular drama or a comedy or whatever. And I do love that about horror. It's all about manipulating the audience, whether that's to get them, scared or uneasy. It's also sometimes just the sleight of hand required with cutting someone's arm off, or there's tricks, there's camera tricks and lighting tricks, or techniques. Tricks is a dumb word. Techniques that you're doing to specifically manipulate the audience in that way, and that's what horror does allow you to do a little more than some other genres, I guess.
Well, that's true. I mean, but the camera movement too, specifically, in like say Evil Dead, you had something to base off kind of in the past with the character, but there's a lot of, you have to get through the woods. You're making creative kind of verite movements, and then the same thing with No One Will Save You, a lot of, however, the lighting is orchestrated versus the camera work is then, and of course the acting's really critical in that. So there's this kind of symbiosis between, the camera and the actor to really bring this thing to life where there's not so much shock rock to it. You know what I mean? You're not cutting arms off in some of these things, you are really driving the fear through the camera movement or the lens itself or the visual aesthetic itself. So I feel like that lends to where your style is in some ways is that, like say I was looking at one shot in behind the scenes and it like where instead of using a zoom pull or something of that nature, you're on a cart and you're actually moving closer to the character with the prime lens that gives almost this zoom effect, but the intensity of it and just slow driving it there, that's really meticulous. There's a lot of extra effort put into something that could be done much, much more on the fly if you wanted. So I feel like it's that aesthetic appeal that kind of lends to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a big difference between moving the camera and just tightening the lens, as you're alluding to. And it's all of those things that you've done a million times on other shows or movies or whatever that you draw from when you want to evoke a certain feeling, right? And so you did right about those little techniques, but none of them are groundbreaking necessarily. It's just about knowing when to call on them. It was my next job. The director was talking the other day about wanting the camera to feel heavy, and I knew exactly what he meant when he said it. Like there's a certain inertia and mass you can give to a camera when it's moving slowly or in a certain way, rather than it feeling like this lightweight thing that you can put anywhere. But it's sort of like you need to sort of give the camera or give the lens that quality from the beginning of the movie. So, and then try and sort of set yourself rules that the camera can then follow, so that subliminally, and this is me talking out of my whatever, but subliminally, the audience feels all of those things, and the subliminal unseen stuff is what my whole job is about, because the audience still feels things even if they're not sure what they saw, and so when it was said, yeah, I want the camera to feel really heavy. That's what I mean. I knew what he meant, and I like setting little rules for myself or for ourselves, me and whoever is directing. Little rules that we follow, so that the film or the show has that those qualities throughout, and I think people notice that and they feel that.
Well, when filming for Abigail, this was paused during the SAG-AFTRA strike in July of 2023, correct?
It was, yeah.
Well, how did this impact production during the time?
Well, we saw it coming a little bit, right? There was a few weeks leading up, and we adjusted the schedule slightly so that we could finish certain actors before we broke. And Ron Lynch, our producer, was very smart in the way he ended up structuring what we had to do. We were able to keep shooting for a few days, doing stunts and various things that didn't involve any of the writing. But so for us, it was annoying to have to stop, because you do have that momentum that you get going. But the way we structured it meant that after we came back, we really only had the big finale fight at the end with Matthew Good, and well, not just him, Melissa and Alicia, and the big fight in the library. So it was really good knowing that it was a sort of one section of action that we had to make, and we could actually do a lot of prep ourselves leading up to that. So I think it made the film better in the end.
Now, with back on No One Will Save You, a lot of lens flare in that one. Like, what kind of lensing did you use in that to capture kind of, you have the blue flare in that, and there was a lot of unique lighting design in that. What was the specific focus? I know there was some kind of like, there was power given to the aliens, and there was a lot of use for that in the narrative, but you take a lot of focus on lighting. So even in Spontaneous, it almost seems like or what was it like? See that tree scene in Evil Dead in the beginning? Remember, and there's a lot of light coming behind the tree when they're talking in the woods.
When you see Mia for the first time, and she's sitting on the car, and the sun sits just above the tree, so it's just very bright.
Yeah. So what is some of your focus now that we've asked 8 questions in one? Let's talk lighting. But with first, we'll start with the lens flare, though. Really, what was the choice for the lens flare in No One Will Save You?
No One Will Save You, the alien lights were almost another character in the film, because the way that the aliens end up using light to control Bryn, almost like a tractor beam, if I'm allowed to use the classic Star Wars phrase. So, they project light inside the house to try and control Bryn. And so knowing that it was going to be a big player and I need to get the light moving, and Brian Duffield's love of movies and just the classics of Hollywood sort of anamorphic look, which I also love. So yeah, it seemed right to combine anamorphic lenses with when light was such a player, and because of the cool happy accidents and things you can look for with lens flares, as you mentioned. As far as lighting generally, I just love lighting, and so if there's an opportunity to, as I mentioned before, influence the way the audience feels, it's not just having the perfect lens, but it's also lighting those characters in a way that has purpose, or you can then take the audience on a journey with those characters in the way that you portray them.
Now,
Does that make any sense?
oh, it makes total sense. But like, see, now having visited a lot of your work, especially in the past, 72 hours, I mean, so it's where's some more notable spots in movies that maybe say everyone, obviously we've already asked you about No One Will Save You, people have in the past as well. What are some spots that have kind of gone unnoticed, but say if you were watching it with someone and you're like, yo, this little lighting thing, check this out. Where's some kind of happy little Easter eggs in there for you?
In my work?
Yeah, in your work, so to speak. What are some significant things that you feel have gone unnoticed? Maybe one or two examples of that.
Oh, I hope it all goes unnoticed. I hope. Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I mean, I understand that, but in the not to pronounce it. I mean, I'm trying to think about it. So what's one of the most significant things you've done with lighting, you think?
Attica, just in general, such an incredible experience for me, because we never shot outside. We never went to a real location. It was 100% studio. So even the day exteriors out in the training square or wherever we are in the story, all of that is lit. So I immediately, it's all fake, right? So
yeah,
so that's good. It means I can have a bit more creative license about how real it looks, or how you can just push things around. And so Spartacus was an incredible training ground for me, and looking at a real world situation and then recreating that in the studio in the best possible version of that real world situation. And it's all through lighting. Sometimes that's as simple as a really hot, hard sun day, but as I say, it's completely lit interior in a studio. So it just forces, I'm not turning up at a perfect beach or having to schedule around a location where the sun moves all day through the sky. So when you've got complete control of where that sun goes, it then forces you to make other choices. You go, okay, well, do I still move the sun around in the scene, or because I can, or do I put it in the perfect spot and make it feel real as if it was in real life?
Oh, so now you're basically universe building in some ways. I mean, one variable lends to another is what you're saying. It sounds like.
Well, it's sort of what you confronted with is the idea that, well, and it's not a new idea, of course. We're making films for 100 years, and this has been happening since the beginning. But I prior to that had usually on day exteriors, you are literally shooting outside, and you're having to contend with all of the issues that come with the earth rotating and the sun moving in the sky. So when that's not the case, and you have suddenly control over where that sun is exactly, it just opens up opportunities with the blocking, with where a character is, what time of day is it, just the perfect sunset, is it a cold silvery morning, is it and again so then it goes to, all right, what's the intent of the scene, not just how flashy can I make this look. It's like, is it a sad scene, is it euphoric, is it whatever, so I'm always trying to take my cues from the words, from the script. So whether that be horror, drama, anything. So all of us have got that same guide, and if we've been working and talking about the intentions leading up to the shoot day, we're all guided by that script.
Talking about when you talk about working with somebody before the shoot and how you need to have a good idea of what you're both looking for. Now, you've worked with Brian Duffield on both features, Spontaneous and No One Will Save You. And how did you meet Brian, and what about his directing style and vision leads to your cinematic efforts when working together?
I met Brian a few years ago when he was going to make another script called Vivian Isn't Herself Lately. And I got that through my agent. And I think he'd asked after me because of Evil Dead, seeing Evil Dead. And the script had sort of horror elements to it. That would be, just speaking on the phone, and we never, that job didn't end up happening. But when I was I'm based in New Zealand. Just that's why I sound funny. But
You don't
You sound
you don't
fine.
sound you don't sound wrong.
coming through LA to go to Canada, I think I thought, oh, I should meet this guy because who knows what's going to happen. And so we just met, had a coffee, and hit it off. And then when Spontaneous came up, he remembered and reached out, and we made that. So it's it was really just about actually having a face-to-face meeting, getting along, and then he was kind enough to remember me when he had another film come up.
But like in Spontaneous, Brian has said in interviews that he likes when the stories, their themes kind of clash. And Spontaneous really goes, I mean, we've talked about the explosions and stuff, and spontaneous combustion and stuff, but there is a lot of element to the story that's very much like coming of age. And like say one of my favorite scenes in it was in the graveyard when she's talking to his mother after he's died, and she just kind of gives the shit happens sinkhole story there, and there are a lot of like character study elements almost in it that make it, I don't know, like how do you, I guess I don't know where I'm going with it, but how do you take what Brian's doing by clashing these worlds together and then infuse them? Because there is like a lot of soft lighting, a lot of like, kind of positive element going on, and then say with some death scenes as violent as it can be, like say when he goes, it's just that kind of red askew that gives you this sort of moment with yourself to absorb what's very likely happened. How did he communicate to you to be able to do that? Because you obviously have a pretty good communication together. I mean, the fact that as the director of photography for No One Will Save You being almost completely visual, I mean, there's a lot of sound with and some very little dialogue, but he obviously has a lot of confidence in you to be able to almost hand you the reins, so to speak, to say, give me the visual elements or make these elements clash in a way that is juxtaposed, but you get it, right? That's where he's kind of saying that to you. And you seem to understand that on a level. How has that sort of relationship between the two of you evolved?
Yeah. Look, firstly, Brian's just a great person. So you're able to really dig into the meaning and depth and the intentions of what are in the script. And then, he's also a big movie nerd, so lots of references and talking about what we like historically and what we don't, and sometimes it's just about talking about the feeling, how it should feel, and then there's nothing quite like that first day of shooting, because for me it's sort of like, how about this? And they either go great or not quite what I had in mind. So because you, as much as you talk through as much of the detail of the film as you can, you've still got to turn up on the first day and light something and point a camera at it and go yes or no. So I'm not even quite sure where I'm going with this, but it's mostly about conversations, being open and honest with each other and trusting each other. And then if it doesn't come up, if I don't like something the way he imagined, he needs to tell me, and then we need to adjust and move on. You mentioned it before. I love Brian's writing, the way he has those thematic sort of clashes, and because Spontaneous is really a love story between these two kids. They just happen to be in a high school where the pupils are exploding. Do you know what I mean? And
It's a very
No One Will
normal
Save You was
story. He's
similar.
kind of set to the left, though. I get what you mean.
Yeah, exactly. And he's a master at that. No One Will Save You is the amazing story about a woman who had a terrible tragedy as a kid where she, inadvertently kills her best friend. Oh, and there's an alien invasion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it throws that out. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Continue.
Yeah, no, it's just, and so sometimes, with both of those films, really, I didn't want to go too heavy on the visuals because the story needed to be grounded because of the crazy shit that's happening to these normal people, So, and then So spontaneous, hopefully, it doesn't draw attention to the images too much. It's just laying an appropriate sort of visual language for when this crazy stuff happens with the exploding kids.
No, it
And
definitely
hopefully the
has a
same.
plausible feel
Yeah.
to it. Like it has a plausible feel to it. If that is that what you're trying to say? Like you want it to have this kind of a very based reality, even though there's an absurdity to it.
Yeah, because the more real you feel the situation, even when they're crazy situations, the more the audience is going to empathize with what's going on with these characters. If it feels like a truly lived-in world, even when it's the shiny version of that lived-in world or whatever, I think again, to my point earlier about those subliminal things that the audience experience, um, it all goes in. They feel it all, um, and so the more I can subliminally have them forget about that there might be something crazy about to happen, it gives more weight when that crazy thing happens.
You know, you're exactly right. Because like say like, and you do it well. Like when there's a scene right before the classroom scene when she has the person doing the movements and then they explode, and then after that. There's a lot going on, but before that, there's this kind of almost a pause where that stops for a while, and you get to affiliate yourselves with the characters and their relationships, which makes you as the viewer like uncomfortable knowing that like this hot potato is like in one of them's hands at any second. So because as you attach yourselves to the character, then you start to care about them when they go. It hurts, and then you can identify with that and personalize it for yourself. So I think that you accomplished that really well. All right, now side note with No One Will Save You, it also comes off like a badass action film, and that Bryn fucks up all those aliens. Like she trashes every Martian. Like by the time we get or the alien, by the time we get to like the fourth or fifth one when they show up, I was more scared for the alien. I'm like, she's gonna take him out.
Yeah, Caitlin was a badass, man. She was so amazing in that movie because there's no dialogue, like you say. It's all physical. She was running all the time, and she would hurt herself, and she was just so great. Um, uh, Sorry, I forget what the question was, but it's more like going to what we were sort of touching on. It's like a piece of music, right? You can't just play uh, as fast as possible or as loud as possible for the whole song because then there's no dynamics to it. It's just one note kind of thing. And so it's the same with filmmaking. We want to have loud sections and quiet sections and slow and fast so that we're sort of taking the audience on a journey. I know that sounds dumb and cliche, but sort of they're going to concentrate if things are being constantly sort of modulated to how we want them to feel. If it's just wall to wall blood the whole time, that gets boring, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean anything in excess would, because then you just become desensitized to it, or it's secondary. No, but I know you say you thought the journey thing sounded dumb, but actually it segues really well into my next question about Bandersnatch with Black Mirror. That's as a cinematographer, director of photography, this has to be a really unique thing to work for because one, you had to film like there's like the total materials around 5 hours, and then you have to there's probably redundancies to filming in sections. So, what was your understandability of it when you were even approached with the project? And they're like, "Are you kind of like making a video game movie?" I mean, you've done didn't you do some with video game like back in the day with Xena or something?
No, it says that on IMDb.
Yeah, that's what I was
I'm not
wondering.
sure how that. I was this. Well, I worked on every single episode of Xena, but by the end of it, but started as the bottom of the camera department on the second unit, but ended up shooting the second unit in the last couple of seasons. But the video game thing, I'm not sure how that got attached to Xena. It just had, but it's more like relative to Bandersnatch. It was we ended up having to add prep, like delay the shoot a little because as we got into it, we were realizing how much there was to do. And none of us had made a film like that before, where you're having to shoot multiple endings and different ways that the character could react to something. So we had the script in the form of this app. I think it was called Twine, which meant you could read the script and choose which way within it you wanted to go. for me, it is the same rules. You're still led by the script. You've just got much more pages to shoot.
It sounds like you would go into like, but were you all at one point like, all right, we're on like ending number 48. We can do this. We can do this. Like, it
Well,
sounds challenging.
yeah, but it was a little bit, but it was the fun of it as well, right? So, what subtle differences are you going to do, knowing the slightly different path that the character's taken? Um, the generic way would be to light at exactly the same time, no matter what the change in the performance was. But I would try and do little subtle things with the lighting so that it felt like it was, relative to the different path that character had chosen. And that goes for, it's I guess an analogy to a lot of filmmaking where sometimes the subliminal things are time consuming. Sometimes, so you've got to make a choice between, is this the right time to have the crew take another half an hour to make this adjustment when no one else will notice but me? Or, yes, it is worth it because that adjustment is part of a larger thematic change that, while only I might notice it, the audience will hopefully feel it. And you that's the dance you're playing with the schedule and the producers and the directors, and because everything I do takes time. It's just how much time, or how much how much rope they're willing to give me before I hang myself sometimes. But do you know what I mean? It's like,
No, I mean, I
if you're not
understand. Go ahead.
yeah, because it's just every facet of filmmaking requires someone to move something somewhere, put it a certain height, make it a certain brightness, or whatever. It's just a really
It's a lot
labor-intensive
of labor
process.
into, yeah, like I mean,
Right?
like that's why, like,
Yeah.
say I worked on a set one time and I understood Steadicam completely differently after that. I was like, oh, that's why you just have the Steadicam operator and they all look like they work out all the time and this and that. Because it is, I mean, and that's just a broad example. I'm redundant in that. You could probably look the past 10 episodes, I'll say it. But it's one of those things where it is really labor intensive as far as the setup and breakdown, the technical aspects, trying to make things fit in certain places, fit the lights around it. And, that's why I was asking about the Alexa 35 earlier, because as the cinema cameras get a little more versatile and smaller, I mean, you've been doing this for a while, so you understand, say, if you're working with the big Panavision box or something like that, the transitions, it can take a while. So, yeah, you're not, I always feel like cinematographers almost understate the actual labor intensity that goes into that job, specifically because they feel that the understandability behind explaining that is just nil. But if you've been through it empirically, you know.
Oh, it's all filmmaking is moving stuff and around and putting it somewhere else, like, but and creating art with it on a good day, right?
Yeah.
And capturing. Actually, no. What we're really there is to capture a performance, and I remind people as often as I need to. It's about that take. Each take is a snowflake, right? It's different slightly each time, and we swan around on a film set, and you do this, do that, but none of it matters unless we're capturing the actor and the performance that the director is looking for. But where it was going before with just the labor intensive part of things is that my role is to really usually manage that labor, and how long it takes, and so you're constantly having that conversation with yourself. All right, this is what I want to do. We're behind by an hour. What I want to do is going to take this long. Is this the right time to play that card? No, we are going to do my original plan, even though we're an hour behind, or whatever, and it's about managing how, when you take a chance on yourself, or when it is the right time to spend the time. Sometimes it isn't, and it can't just be about the artistic endeavor. because you've got a producer standing at the back of the set going, this is taking a long time, so I like the challenge of being in charge of where we're going artistically, but the nuts and bolts and housekeeping of how we manage to make that in the amount of time that we have.
So you definitely you like the challenge of the logistics of it, which is what makes you the DOP.
Well, you have, unless you do, you shouldn't be doing it, because that's all of the job, right? It's about having a vision in your head and understanding what's required to create that vision, and that requires a lot of communication, a lot of just practical understanding of how the equipment works. Enough of a good attitude that you convince people to do the things that you're asking of them. And I don't know, that leads me to another, the leadership part of being a cinematographer, I think, is most of the job. Because everything that I do requires other people to help me. That makes sense?
Oh yeah, I mean 100%. It's you need somebody pulling focus. You're going to need somebody probably setting and putting on matte box, pulling off a matte box, cables, everything. You need a lot of things going.
Yeah, the entire camera, grip, and lighting departments are there to help me make pictures to tell a story, and so sometimes that might be 5 people, sometimes it might be 50. And so it's important to me that those people have a good. That's how standing on a film set is how we spend our lives. So I need to be a positive person in those people's lives, because it's the hours are very long. We're away from our loved ones. Half the time we're in a foreign country. So the last thing I want to do is make the time we spend any more miserable than it needs to.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. I mean, with all the challenges that come with filmmaking, you at least want to try and make it fun and worth your time. The experience needs to be worthwhile, so to speak. All right, well, let's take a quick break here on The Ghost of Hollywood. I'm Poxy Leonard here with Miss Reagan and cinematographer, or director of photography, Aaron Morton, talking about all of his recent work on Abigail, No One Will Save You, the first Omen, and then we're going to revisit some other stuff in his career and continue discussing what we've already been discussing as well. Going to turn things over here to Simon for a minute, so we step out studio, take a quick break while he gives you a little bit of the cinematic dumpster fire, an old narrative horror story of the disasters of movie making. And tonight is definitely a good one for sure. So we'll be right back with Simon after these messages. Stay tuned. You're listening to The Ghost of Hollywood.
Interested in television or movies?
Then check out The Ghost of Hollywood for the best in cinema-related podcast at theghostofhollywood.com or wherever you get your podcast.
When it comes to making movies, anything can go wrong. And tonight we're here to discuss that on the Cinematic Dumpster Fire.
Welcome back to another segment of the Cinematic Dumpster Fire right here on The Ghost of Hollywood, and I hope you're enjoying Poxy and Reagan's interview with Aaron Morton. That said, while they take a quick break, I'm here to entertain the most humane way possible by telling you another scary campfire story about the horrors of movie making. This time, though, it's with animals. Big animals, like lions and tigers, no bears, but still plenty of cougars, cheetahs, exotic birds, and so on. I'm sure you've already started putting it together, or you're about to hear the infamous story of the making of the 1981 movie, Roar, for the very first time. And trust me, you'll never forget it. Now, the reason you may have not seen or heard of it, particularly if you're American, is because Roar never landed a U.S. distribution bill due to its lack of vested interest domestically once that the film was completed.
I like this one. I got here as fast as I could.
Oh, hey, Poxy. You showed up just in time. I'm about to break into the details of the making of the movie Roar.
Oh, yeah. You mean like Roar, like the Noel Marshall, Tippi Hedren, Big Cat disaster?
That's the one.
Oh, yeah. Tigers on TV, baby. Definitely a dangerous pursuit there, that's for sure.
To elaborate on Poxy's vagaries...
Vagaries?
Would you call them details?
That's your job, buddy. I just provide the comedic relief, so to speak.
Too bad this isn't a visual performance.
Hey, now.
Just saying. Anyway, big cats. Let's start there.
So, back in the 70s, like literally the beginning of the 70s, Noel Marshall and his wife, Tippi Hedren, known for her infamous lead in Hitchcock's The Birds, and their children, one of whom is the famous actress Melanie Griffith, set out to make a self-produced movie called Roar. This story was focused around character Hank, who lives in Africa with a lot of big and undomesticated cats.
Yeah, and by cats, he means lions and tigers.
They know that, Poxy.
Yeah, just making sure. No bears, no bears.
Thanks for your help, big guy.
Yeah, I'm here like a century, homeboy.
Now, Hank's family comes to visit him, and they're unaware of the animal scenario they walk into, which presents a lot of danger. The catch is, it's all real.
Yeah, because like Tippi and Noel raise all of these wild animals in their own home in Sherman Oaks and SFV. That's right, San Fernando Valley Ranch. Shout out everybody down there. And then they set out to use all these animals in their film. Of course, no one, including the entire crew hired to work on the production, had much or any experience working with animals, ranging from lions to elephants.
They tried, though.
Yeah, for like a week, and everyone was like, I'm out.
Which is how long it took before some serious injuries occurred on set. Notable is the scalping of later famed film director and then cinematographer Jan de Bont, who would actually return to finish the remaining 5 years of production.
Yeah, and then Melanie Griffith would have some of her face basically pulled off, which resulted in reconstructive surgery and probably some critical rethinking by the production team.
There was no rethinking, Poxy.
Yeah, I know. You're right. That's true. Go ahead, continue.
Noel's injuries are endless to count, along with his reputable walk on the brink of sanity. According to his co-stars and his family, he also struggled to gain and then retain investors for the film, losing his Japanese attachments after they witnessed a naked, bloodstained Noel fighting off his lions on his set.
Oh yeah, naked, bloodstained lion fighter. That's a job for me. But, then they were, what?
I don't think you really need that job.
But then there were floods and wildfires, right? They totally destroyed the set, and this resulted in some of the animals, particularly I think a lot of the lions, got loose, and the sheriff shot 3 of them.
It was actually flooding from a nearby dam that would contribute to hefty budget costs, totaling at around $17 million against an international release excluding the North American sector that only netted $2 million. They also had to move the lions from their home in 1972 since they were illegally housing them in Sherman Oaks. This led to the purchase of land in Soledad Canyon, where a subset was built and the lions housed. Tons of cottonwoods were planted to give it a Tanzanian look, and 14 telephone poles were used to reinforce the 2-story house so it can handle the weight from all the animals.
Oh God, there's just so much to this. It's just endless.
I know, right? When I decided to bring the light to it for the segment, I figured we hardly scraped the surface.
I don't know. I mean, you're doing all right. If I was listening, I would have like fled to Wikipedia, where I'd indulge in like YouTube disaster videos for as much as I could absorb, probably. And there are plenty of Roar disaster videos. Go ahead.
It really continues about that way, too. Check it. Noel Marshall was in a verbal agreement with William Peter Blatty for 15% return on the sales of The Exorcist. This eventually landed in court because there was no formal contract in place, and Noel won a large settlement, which went right into financing Roar. He also had a commercial production company that he started at the time, which became incredibly lucrative for him. More money into Roar.
Yeah, I know, but then even that went bankrupt. And, considering Roar wears the crown, the most dangerous movie ever made, I'd say the Marshall family kind of went the distance here. They're pretty crazy, though. They have to be insane. Yeah.
Would you make a movie with lions, Foxy?
I would make a movie with lions, Simon, with you, because I am insane.
I am going in this one, buddy.
All right. So don't start casting some strange fate my way.
All right. And that will wrap up another brief segment of the Cinematic Dumpster Fire right here on The Ghost of Hollywood. I'm your host, Simon, and stay tuned because Poxy and Reagan will return with Director of Photography, Aaron Morton, to continue their conversation right after these messages. Until next time, everybody.
Interested in television or movies?
Then check out The Ghost of Hollywood for the best in cinema-related podcast at theghostofhollywood.com or wherever you get your podcast.
When you've worked with we've talked about the Netflix series, and we talked about Black Mirror a little bit, and then you've also shot for Sweet Tooth and Shadow and Bone. Now, more recently, you've worked as a DOP for various episodes of the Rings of Power, the new Lord of the Rings series, and then that's streaming on Hulu, and then of course you've got Our Flag Means Death, which streams on Max. What are some of the similarities and differences between filming or working for productions for each of these streaming platforms? Are there a lot of different spec requirements or kind of expectations from those production, the production based end of those companies when you're working for them?
Not really. No. Once Netflix sort of established the 4K capture requirement, I mean, everyone else fell into line behind them, I think. And so I didn't really feel any pressure in a different way from any streamer per se. The differences will come down to the management, so the showrunners, and their expectations for each individual show. Yeah.
All right.
Well, I'm curious. How do you approach cinematography for a one-off episode that fits into an overall series? And what are some of the unique challenges that are involved in prepping for that, like remaining in the same sort of style that they've had throughout the series?
So I haven't done that a whole lot. I did that a little bit with Our Flag Means Death. I was sort of filling in for Mike Bellucci, who's a top man. And having done a lot of second unit in my past, I'm happy to sort of fit in and emulate other people's lighting, or, the last thing I would want to do is have my show look different from the style that's established. And so it was an incredible way to learn lighting and learn filmmaking, shooting second unit back in my 20s and 30s, because it forces you to look at an image that someone else has made and pull that image apart. Okay, they bounced this from over there, and they're always looking for a hard backlight, or the hot sun hitting the ground must be 3 stops over, or so it was amazing training, as I say, shooting second unit for other people when I was learning the ropes, because I can understand an image in a very technical way and how to recreate that image. And so when later on I'm guesting on someone's show or went out, I'm able to just mimic them making it about me, I hope.
Well, now switching gears to Evil Dead. Now, I want to talk about the special effects and how the lack of CGI, how did that influence the production? And do you have any preferences for using practical effects versus CGI?
It must have been pretty similar to kind of like, I mean, the time difference so I guess there might have been some technological differences, but like similar to Abigail or something, yeah?
Yeah, it was similar to Abigail, maybe. The thing with Evil Dead, it all stemmed from Fede's insistence that we use as little CG, as little VFX as possible. Now, sometimes there's only one way to do something, but usually there's many. And so, again, because Fede was so insistent on trying to do as much in camera, it just forced us to have lots of meetings. It forced us to talk about, all right, if we want this character, if we want to see her pick up the electric knife, and in one shot, we follow her as she takes that knife, switches the knife on, and then digs into her upper arm in the same shot, but we don't want to do that CG. How are we going to do it? And all right, we could do this, we could do that, we could, how about, and so it just becomes the sort of hive mind of best idea wins. And if you've got a director that's willing to listen, and Fede certainly is. Fede's a great director, and came up with some amazing ideas. But that instance with, with our actor on the ground, we came up with putting a stunt person in the cupboard that's behind her on the set, and the stunt person's arm would be reaching around. And then we had a little connective piece between the stunt arm, elbow, and the real actor's shoulder. And so it meant that we could have her cut into that piece of her upper arm, which was prosthetic. Now, if we'd from the get-go had CG as an option, it wouldn't have forced us to come up with those sorts of ideas. But I think being forced to do that made the scene better, and it made it more visceral and gross and hard to watch.
It was probably, I mean, I'm sure it was a lot, probably added to the depth of work, but I bet it was cool to film too. It was probably, because that's kind of the exciting stuff.
Awesome.
Everybody's like, yeah, it's a cool part. We're going to cut the arm off. Shit.
Absolutely. And because it's a bit more, you're relying on, you've only got 2 or 3 versions of the piece that you're going to cut into. So it's like a live performance from everybody. And if it goes wrong, then you're going to have to clean it up, and it's a half an hour to pull her out of the thing and put a new piece of arm, and then you've got to clean up the blood. And so it heightens the take, it heightens the performance of everybody. I said before that we're really just there to capture the actors, but every other person in that process has to get their piece right.
Oh yeah, but everybody's
to
like,
capture,
everybody's like looking at the camera guy. They're like, look, you look at everything in that frame. You're not missing nothing. He's like, I'm not missing nothing. They get the shot. They're like, you see the special effects guy in the back. Shit, we got to do it again.
Well, all of those things, and you like that anyway, no matter what the take, no matter what the. But when you've only got one chance to do something, it just everybody is, is on their toes, and it's a fun way to work.
All right, now let's talk. We got to talk about Frosty Man in the BMX gig, because that's just cool, man.
Yeah.
Like it's got some cool elements to it. That one, all right, so obviously, the short itself is fantastic and fun and humorous, but there's also, I have like naive questions like, all right, now when there's jumping in the water and back
flip
down
scene.
there, yeah, how did you position the camera and where were you up on the top and the bottom of that? And then the other end of it is, say, you've done a lot of commercial work, and we have talked about lighting, but there is a significance to lighting for like products or things of that nature. And in the beginning of Frosty, you start to you immediately see the ice cream, but like you want to lick the fucking ice cream through through the screen because it's there. So how'd you get involved with that? And just, how was the whole thing put together there?
Yeah, so that was a short film competition run by the New Zealand Tourism Board, or I might be getting the name slightly wrong. Effectively, they put it out there for people to write a script that featured New Zealand in a way, in any way they could, and they would get a budget to make that short film based on how appropriate it was to selling New Zealand as a tourism destination. And so that was a first-time writer. He was actually a stunt person who was writing, Tim Mack. Hey, Tim. And yeah, he wrote the story about God and a kid doing bombs off into the lake, and it was just a cool story. So, but it was technically very tricky to make because a certain location, like I love that part of New Zealand, Central Otago, all those lakes. It's just incredible, Queenstown area. But what happened in the script, there wasn't one location that could serve the story. So the location, if we're looking towards the lake, was one location. If we're looking away from the lake, that background was a whole nother place. The person where they jumped off and saw the landing, that's another place. So what it becomes, it comes down to an exercise in, all right, what are the images we need to tell the story or want to tell the story? What are the locations that are available to us? And then having being able to sit down, all right, well, this direction works great for this shot, this direction works for that. And then with the director, myself, and the first assistant director, figuring out the schedule. So, all right, we can't get from this location to that location in one day. All right, we've got to be. So it becomes a real Rubik's Cube of problems to solve.
Well, do you have to focus around, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but do you have to focus around breaking line when you're shooting one direction and the other and you're shooting them out of sync like that? How do you work on not breaking line?
Yeah, all of those things. I mean, the line is just like breathing for me now. I've done it for 30 years. But having done it for 30 years, you bring all of those skills to the table. You go, oh, well, we don't need to be here for that, or we can pick up this close up there because we can't see the mountain tops. So as I said before, everything that you see in a film is fake. The actors are saying words made up by someone else. You know what I mean? So leaning into that allows you to go, oh, that means that close up, even though the shot that just preceded it showed the person in this location. If in the close-up there's nothing in that the way where you are, then we can pick up that close-up. And so it really, again, comes down to what other shots we want to tell the story, where are the best places to shoot those shots, irrespective of if they're in the same location, in the same country half the time. I've done things where I've picked up things in a different city, and and it's about understanding what you're showing the audience and knowing that the audience has no idea of what's outside of the frame.
Yeah,
they don't know. They only know what we show them. And that is so empowering once you get, and it's such an obvious thing to say, but in practice, it frees us up to break so many rules, or to be able to use a location in many different ways.
Being that you're based in New Zealand, do you find anything unique or advantageous about filming there?
The people is the biggest thing. Sure, I'm so lucky to live in such a beautiful place, and that's, I guess, partly why I'm still here, and haven't moved somewhere closer to the rest of the world. But it's about the film crews here, and I'm not saying it's completely unique. I've had amazing experiences all around the world, but having grown up in film here, and I know everybody, and they're all my friends, and everyone has this attitude of, yeah, let's just get it done. We don't have, or that thing that we thought we'd have, we can't afford it on this job, but we'll do it another way. There's always a way to solve a problem, and everyone works together to solve those problems. So it's that I think is the intangible thing that shooting in New Zealand can bring.
Now I know. Touch on real quick. All right, in that short, The Knife Jogger. Is that you? Are you the guy with the knife?
That's my son.
Oh.
My son's film. I think he was maybe 12 when he shot that, and I play like a teacher in the school, and it's just a play on words for Blade Runner, knife jogger. Like it's.
Oh, I like
that
now. I
dumb.
get it even more.
Yeah,
That's
I
great.
like this. Yeah.
But it was fun because I was like, oh, we're looking at this,
the-
and I was like, all right, we got the notes from the team. I was like, I read this, and I was like, wait, he played a character in this, and we looked it up. I was like, oh shit! But that's cool.
Mhm.
That's cool that your son did it. So like, because I saw that the same last
The same
names,
last names.
and I'm trying to correlate, and I'm like, all right, there's no brother, there's no father. Who is this? Maybe they're just coincidentally
Yeah.
named the same thing. So you answered that question.
Yeah. No, it's literally my son in school and his friends making a fun short film. And I was the only adult that was willing to run around with a butcher's knife through the school.
You're gracious for it. You're gracious for it. Now, with what was I going to ask you? Sorry. Now, let's talk about Orphan Black for a minute. Orphan Black is something that you worked on for quite a while, right? I mean, you pretty much, I think you did almost every episode excluding a few, correct?
Yeah, I shot 47 of the 50, but the reason I didn't do the other 3 is I directed 3 episodes as well, and I shot the episodes. I was a DP and director on my episodes, and so when I was prepping those, someone else had to shoot the shows for another director. Anyway, it was me causing a situation where I wanted to do both jobs.
But
Anyway,
you wanted. Oh, so
yeah.
you actually got to direct a little bit. You don't sound like you want to discuss this.
No, I'm happy to discuss it. No, I love the show. I love the experience. It was I
mean, I don't mean the
negative
show
about
overall. I
it at
just
all.
mean like the attempt at taking the directing experience. Like, say we talked to Tate
Oh, I love
Donovan
that.
one time, and he broke ground with the OC in his directing experience. So was this like some of your first actual directing experience, was working on this?
Oh, yeah, absolutely was my first. And they asked me to. John Fawcett asked, as an old friend and the showrunner of the show, asked me to direct after I'd been on shooting the show for 2 seasons. And I was like, sure, I'd love to try that, but only if I can shoot them as well, because I didn't want to be a director, I didn't want to have someone else shoot my show. So he ended up allowing me to be the DP and the director on the shows that I directed. And it was amazing. It was an incredible experience. I'm so glad I did it. Directing's a really hard job. So it's really nice to have walked in those shoes. Yeah.
When you actually got to do it, because you'd been working on the program at that point already, did you kind of feel comfortable with that transition, being that you kind of knew the environment and the material, and when it actually happened, did you feel did those expectations play out? You were like, okay, it's about kind of how I thought it would be, or were you like, oh, never mind, this is a lot more than I thought it would be?
Oh, it was even more than I thought it would be, but it was an amazing environment to try it because everyone standing on the set were my friends. The actors were encouraging and they wanted me to succeed, and it was so familiar to me. But I made it very hard for myself because I figured I had no excuse for it not to be great, because inside and out, and I had crazy clone scenes that other people hadn't tried, and but that was the advantage I had, that I knew the process and the show so well. I went and swung for the fences with the clone scenes that were in my episodes.
Do you, in swinging for the fence, do you feel like did you hammer on nail where you wanted to?
Oh, totally. Yeah, I think so. I guess you'd have to watch the show, but
well, I mean, I can have an opinion of it, but from your perspective, you know what I mean? My opinion doesn't matter.
Well, it was such a technical show to make, but it had so much heart. The scripts were so good, and Tatiana herself is such an incredible actor, playing those multiple roles. And it's a really hard thing to do, to make a show, a clone show, where one actor is playing 2, 3, or even 4 characters in the same scene against herself. It's really hard to do that well, but we got really good at it. And so I was going to take as much advantage of my knowledge of how we did it as possible, and it was just so satisfying to sort of be able to turn up and not have to discuss anything and just go, okay, guys, this is what we're doing. Because I was doing both jobs, DP and director. So that was super empowering, but and fun with all my friends on the crew. Okay, guys, this is what we're going to do. We're going to try this, and it's like, but I didn't have anyone really to sound off, to run my ideas against. They just went, okay, let's do it. And but it turned out great. And again, as I say, I'm so glad that I had to go at directing. It reinforced how much I love being a cinematographer. I'm more than happy with my sticking with my day job.
All right, directing was cool, and keep that shit though. I'm out here.
Well, it's just like it's about knowing what excites you and what turns you on as far as filmmaking, and I just think I've still got a long way to go and a lot to learn about being a cinematographer.
That makes sense. Understandable.
Well, what have you run into any dangerous situations or close calls throughout the years while I've been working behind the camera?
There's been dangerous situations, Reagan. Yes, so what has been your craziest situation? Because there are lots of challenges with that.
Yeah, I've done some things, and mostly back in the early days with Xena, as we're all sort of learning as we went a little bit. I ended up being the second unit DP on Xena, and we did some stuff that I would not do the same way now, to be fair. I remember we were shooting a chariot race. So very much
like Ben-Hur status.
Yep, classic Ben-Hur. But on a back of West Auckland here in New Zealand, and the big Xena backlot. But we literally had chariots ramming each other. But I was standing in the back and leaning in with the camera toward the wheels as they would smash against each other, and it was just dumb, but really cool, really fun. But so we did do things a little looser back then. I remember another thing. I remember first time I used. Sometimes they're called last resort belts. It's like a safety belt you put around your waist, and it doubles back through a latch and then velcros, but you've got to do it in the right way. We're doing a shot where I think it was Zoe Bell climbing a ladder, a log tower, like a 30-foot tall tower, and I'm standing on the top of this tower, pointing the camera straight down, leaning on a cable that's attached to this belt around my waist, so that I could look directly on top of Zoe, who's playing Xena, as she climbs up towards me. And cut, great, oh, cool, got that. And I'm taking this belt off, which was the only thing stopping me from falling off the log tower onto Zoe. And I realized I hadn't done it up correctly. It was the first time I'd used it, and I was dumb. But it was just the Velcro holding me from falling off this tower.
Okay.
And so just dumb things like that you learn from, and you don't do the same way twice. In terms of safety, so I really rely heavily on the grip department. Got such good friends and stuff that I've worked with many times. And as camera operators, we're so reliant on the grips to look after us. And there's a strong bond and a trust that comes with that, whether that's car to car work and vehicles, or being suspended off, on the end of a crane somewhere. There's just things you end up doing, and you definitely have to be aware of your own safety and look at how you're harnessed to something, or have an interest in that. But at the end of the day, you are really at the mercy of the skill of the grips and the safety department. So, these days sets are much safer than they used to be, and I'm really thankful for that. But it was a pretty amazing time back in the 90s, doing some things that we probably shouldn't have done. Yeah.
Now I'll be watching and be like, I love all those old, like you got Hercules and Sinbad, all those that were going on. I was a kid then, so I had 4 channels out where I live. Those came on during the weekend. You were like, hell yeah, Xena's on. Let's do this, watch it.
Awesome, man. Classic.
Going forward now, you worked on Rings of Power a little bit. How was your experience with the Lord of the Rings universe? Looks like was a lot of that done in studio?
Yeah, a lot of studio, but we certainly went to the South Island and visited similar places to where the movies were made. But huge studio sets, huge budget, lots of people, enormous crew. So no excuses really in terms of having the toys and the things that you need to make something look great. Incredible local crew. Sean O'Neill, our gaffer, and his team created fabricated rigs and for lighting that I'd never seen before, and yeah, it was just fun. Yeah, it was awesome.
Now, before we wrap up the interview, as a DOP, how do you advise and teach other aspiring cinematographers who have worked for you throughout the years?
I like to be open with everything I'm doing. I was very, very fortunate in my early days meeting someone called John Cavill, and he was a DP on Xena, and I knew him even from before that. And he went on to shoot second unit on the Lord of the Rings films, and he sort of took me under his wing. He taught me a lot, but he always said to me that the information's only as good as what you do with it. And so I've sort of kept that mantra myself, where I'll tell anyone that's willing to listen what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, because if they're willing to get up early or take this information and use it themselves on the weekends and things that they're making, then that's more power to them. I love the idea that cinematography is a learnable, repeatable skill. It's not magic. It just comes down to learning how to do something, why something looks a certain way, and then finding your own way to do that, and it's science and art. It's a beautiful marriage of engineering and creativity. Yeah.
Well said, Aaron. All right. Well, we appreciate you making the time to join us here on the Ghost of Hollywood. I I have a million questions because I like cinematography, but from a far point, I'd be like, I'm like the kid that reads space magazines and asks physicists questions, and then they give me answers, and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. But in this serious note, thank you very much for joining us on the Ghost of Hollywood and making the time to do this. We've appreciated all of your work that we've been able to sit and watch, and you've got all kinds of stuff on the table, and thank you for joining us on the Ghost of Hollywood.
Thank you so much.
Hey, my pleasure, guys. Always love talking film stuff with anyone that's willing to listen, and much appreciated.
Interested in television or movies?
Then check out The Ghost of Hollywood for the best in cinema-related podcast at theghostofhollywood.com or wherever you get your podcast.
Welcome back to the Ghost of Hollywood. I'm Poxy Leonard here with Miss Reagan, and the time has come for us to say so long again.
Why did that have a sing-song feel to it?
Well, I was sort of like almost channeling Carol Burnett for a second, I think.
Carol Burnett?
Like she used to sing the song and pull her ear, and well, maybe I'm dating myself.
Carol Burnett went off the air before you were even born.
Look, Reagan, I could be old if I want to, okay?
Anyway, we'd like to thank Director of Photography, Aaron Morton, for joining us on tonight's program. Definitely check out his latest work on the movies Abigail and The First Omen.
Yes, we'd also like to thank our crew here at the Ghost of Hollywood. Lynn has done a great job working behind the scenes this season, and Chris has even done a little bit of composition work while Jesse's been out the game.
Yeah, I like some of the new tunes in the background.
Yeah, Chris was working on some other stuff for a different project with me, so he sent some tracks my way, and we fused it together and got a little song.
That explains all the instrumental recording setup we've been buried with here in the studio.
Yeah, definitely been a lot going on here in the studio. But that aside, we will be back in just a few short weeks for a brand new episode of The Ghost of Hollywood. And I don't think we're going out of season until like episode 50, so plenty on deck from us in the coming months.
I did notice a push in episodic content this season.
Yeah, well, in the meetings, backdoor disclosure, baby, I violate all the NDAs, by the way.
There are no NDAs, Poxy.
True. Maybe we should get some to emphasize our self-importance.
Okay, go ahead and write yourself an NDA then.
We digress.
It happens.
Yeah, but I was explaining that the reason for the content push is because of the removal of the pilot episodes from the available catalog.
I'm cool with that. I was like 11 in those, so yeah, super embarrassing.
Oh, I remember a little Reagan. You were just as cruel then.
I try to keep up with the times.
Well, the decision was made that we would remove any episodes that had been formatted specifically for radio, which meant the death of the pilots, right? So the production team has wanted to expand to 2 episodes monthly for a total of 20 a year, which means you and I are going to be working a lot more.
Yeah, big deal. We talk for a living.
I don't know about you, but my mouth gets tired.
That's because you talk too much for a living.
And they pay too little.
I don't know why they pay you at all.
Yeah, maybe they'd pay me more if, you were,
Funny. I was just thinking the same thing.
Oh, great minds think alike, Reagan.
Except you're an idiot, Poxy. And that's it, everybody. We will see you all again in 2 weeks. For more information on The Ghost of Hollywood, please visit theghostofhollywood.com.
All right, wall crawlers, until next time.
Good morning and good night.
You've been listening to another episode of The Ghost of Hollywood. The Ghost of Hollywood is written by Chris Klon and Zach Flannery. The show is created by Zach and Reagan Flannery, with special performances and appearances by Simon Flannery and Lennox Flannery. Mixing and mastering by Lennox Flannery and It Whistle Productions and Electric Garden Company in Vancouver, Washington, and Portland, Oregon. Composition by Pineapple Nightmare, Jesse Garcia, and Chris Klon. For more information on The Ghost of Hollywood, please visit theghostofhollywood.com.